The rooftop of Daeg High School always smelled of oncoming rain and rusted iron. For Taeyang and Wayan, it was the center of the universe. They had grown up in the same narrow alleyways, shared the same bruised knees from falling off bicycles, and shared the same quiet, unspoken language. Everyone knew they belonged together, yet neither had possessed the courage to bridge the final inch between friendship and forever until that Tuesday. The sun was sinking low, bleeding shades of bruised purple and burnt orange across the horizon. Taeyang stood by the wire mesh fence, his oversized school blazer catching the wind. When he turned to look at Vian, his usual boxy grin was missing. In its place was an intensity that made her breath hitch. Vian, he said, his voice deeper than usual, vibrating against the concrete. I have spent 17 years being your best friend, but I don't think I can do it for another day. Vian's heart stumbled. What do you mean, Tay? He stepped closer, closing the distance until she could smell the faint scent of laundry, detergent, and mint on him. He reached down, his large warm hand enveloped hers. I love you, he whispered, his eyes wide, vulnerable, and furiously honest. Not like a sister, not like a friend. I want to be the person who hold your hand when you are old. I want to be yours. Will you be my girlfriend? A wave of pure, unadulterated joy crashed over Vian. The universe felt suddenly perfectly aligned. A bright smile broke across her face, tears of happiness pricking her eyes. Yes, she breathed, throwing her arm around his neck. 1,000 times yes, young. For 3 glorious months, the world was perfect. They stole kisses behind the old maples in the park, shared earphones on the bus ride home, and whispered about a future where they have never be apart. Then the world shattered. It happened in the winter. Taeyang, with his unique vocal tone and striking visual, was scouted and officially accepted as a trainee at Big Hit Entertainment. It was a golden ticket, a ticket out of their small town into the blinding lights of Seoul. But gold always comes with the price. No dating, not now, not during training, and definitely not after debut. If I make it, Taeyang explained, his face pale as they sat in their usual park. His eyes were wide with panic. The industry, the rules are strict, Vian. They could kick me out if they find out. Vian felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. So, what does that mean for us? Taeyang gripped her shoulder tightly, his gaze burning. It means I am not going. I am going to reject the offer. I can find another career. I can do art or photography or just get a regular job. I won't give up, Vian. I can't. Vian stared at him, her heart breaking into distinct ways. She saw the raw passion in his eyes when he sang. She knew music was his soul. If he gave it up for her he would eventually grow to resent her. She would not let him kill his own dream before it even started. She needed to make him hate her. It was the only way he would leave for Seoul without looking back. The next afternoon, she met him by the river. Her face was a mask of cold stone, though her hands were shaking inside her pockets. We need to break up, Ryan said, her voice flat, devoid of the warmth he loved. Taeyang froze, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. What? Is this a joke? Ryan, it's not funny. It's not a joke. She lied smoothly, forcing her gaze to remain steady. My parents found out about us. They saw us together last week. They were furious, Taeyang. My dad scolded me for hours. They threatened to pull me out of school and stop supporting my university studies if I keep seeing you. I can't ruin my future for a high school romance. Taeyang staggered back. as if physically struck. The warmth in his eyes died, replaced by a sudden betrayal. A high school romance? Is this all this was to you? I was ready to throw away my entire future for you. And that's exactly why we should not be together. She snapped, her voice cracked slightly, though she masked it with anger. It's too much pressure. I need to focus on myself. Taeyang stared at her, his jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with the painful bitterness. You are selfish, he spat out, the words cutting through the freezing air like a knife. You love only yourself, Ryan. He turned on his heel and walked away, his stride long and furious. Ryan stood frozen. The moment his back was entirely turned, the mask shattered. She spun around in the opposite direction, and a torrential downpour of tears finally spilled from her eyes. She sobbed silently into her hands, the weight of his hatred crushing her chest, even as she prayed he would fly high in soar. The bustling hive of Hive headquarters in Yongsan was a labyrinth of glass, concrete, and high-stakes creativity. Vian walked through the corridors holding a tablet tightly against her chest. She had worked tirelessly, climbing the ranks until she is hired as a senior video editor for the company's main roster. She knew he is here. Everyone in the world knew who is Kim Tae-young now. He is V of BTS, a global icon, a masterpiece of a man adored by millions. Suddenly, the elevator doors at the end of the hall dinged. Out stepped BTS. They were laughing, surrounded by staff. Ryan instantly stepped back against the wall, bowing her head respectfully. As they walked past, Taeyang's gaze shifted. For a split second, his sharp dark eyes locked onto hers. The air in the hallway seemed to vanish. Ryan's heart hammered against her ribs, but just as quickly as he looked, his expression went completely blank. He looked right through her, ignoring her presence entirely as he continued walking, chatting idly with Jimin. He did not know that the rest of the members had noticed. Namjoon glanced back at Ryan with a look of profound sorrow. Yoongi sighed quietly, shaking his head. The members knew the whole history, or at least the version Taeyang had told them through broken tears during their training days. They knew she was the ghost that haunted his lyrics, and seeing them in the same building acting like strangers was a tragedy they did not know how to fix. Despite the dynamic of forced indifferences, the universe seemed determined to pull them into the same orbit. A week later, Ryan was editing a promotional video in Editing Bay 4. It was late past midnight and the building was mostly deserted. The door clicked open, expecting a night shift intern. Ryan did not look up from her duo screen. Can you check the color grading on the come over archival footage? A deep, velvet voice asked. Yuan froze. She slowly turned around. Tang was standing by the door, wearing a loose black hoodie, his curly hair falling over his eyes. He looked tired, but breathtakingly beautiful. I, yes, I can do that, VC, she said formally, her voice trembling slightly. Taeyang flinched at the formal title. He walked over, standing just behind her chair to look at the monitor. His proximity was overwhelming. Ryan could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell the exact same subtle cologne he used nowadays. As she reached for the mouse, her fingers accidentally brushed against his hand resting on the desk. An electric shock seemed to pass between them. Taeyang gasped softly. His eyes snapped down to her face. For a beautiful, terrifying second, the cold walls fell away. Ryan saw the boy from the deck rooftop, staring back at her, longing, confused, and deeply hurt. She leaned in slightly, drawn by an invisible gravity. But then Taeyang caught himself. He pulled his hand back as if burned his expression hardening again. He was terrified of having his heart broken all over again by the girl who had cast him aside. Just send it to the manager when it's done, he muttered coldly, turning and leaving the room before she could say another word. Vian sank back into her chair, pressing her hands together, her trembling lips. He hates me, she thought bitterly, and he has every right to. The workload ahead of BTS' 13th anniversary content drop was brutal. Ryan hadn't slept properly in 3 days, surviving entirely on black coffee and convenience store Kimber. Her vision was blurring, a dull roar echoing in her ears as she rushed down the fifth floor halfway, holding a stack of hard drives. Suddenly, the world tightened, her legs felt like water. YNC Jungkook was walking out of a dance studio when he saw her stagger. Before he could reach her, the hard drives clattered to the floor and Ryan collapsed completely unconscious. Hey, someone call an ambulance, Jungkook shouted, sprinting forward. He slid on his knees, catching her before her head hit the hard floor. Her face was deathly pale, her skin clammy. Without a second thought, Jungkook scooped her up into his arm and rushed toward the elevators, yelling for the medical staff. An hour later, Ryan was admitted to the hospital, hooked up to an IV drip for severe exhaustion and malnutrition. The news traveled fast within the tightly knit company. By the time evening fell, Ryan slowly opened her eyes to the starlight white light of a private hospital room. Sitting in the chair beside her bed wasn't a coworker, it was her father. His chair was thinner now, his face lined with rage, but his eyes were filled with immense regret. Dad, Ryan whispered, her voice raspy. You foolish girl, her father said softly, taking her weak hand. You always work yourself to the bone. He paused, looking out the window for a long moment before looking back at her. Ryan, I need to ask you something. I have kept this in my heart for 8 years. Ryan blinked, confused. The day you broke up with that boy, Taeyang, her father said, his voice thick with emotion. I saw you two by the river. I saw how you looked at him, and I listened to everything you said to him. Ryan breathed hissed. Dad, please. Why did you lie to him, Ryan? Her father interrupted, his eyes staring up. You told him I threatened you. You told him I would stop your studies. I was strict, yes, but I would never have destroyed your happiness. Why did you make him believe you were so selfish? Tears began to spill over Ryan's cheeks, soaking into the hospital pillow. The dam she had built for 8 years finally burst. Because I wanted him to be successful in his life, Dad, she sobbed, her voice breaking into agonized peace. If he stayed with me, he would have given up his dream. Love is not a prison. Love is like a freedom. I wanted to see him loved and admired by millions of people because he deserved it. I wanted him to fly high. She choked on a sob, pressing her hand over her chest. But in that process, I broke his heart. I made him hate me, and it was the only way. Unknowns to them, the door to the room was slightly ajar. Jungkook had been standing outside, holding a bag of fruit he had bought for her. He heard every single word. His jaw dropped, his own eyes filling with tears as the tragic, beautiful truth of what Ryan had done finally come to light. 30 minutes later, Jungkook burst into the BTS lounge back at Hybe, slamming the door behind him. Namjoon, Yoongi, Jimin, Jin, J-Hope, and Taeyang all looked up in shock. Taeyang Hyung, Jungkook panted, pointing a finger at him, tears streaming down his face. You are an idiot. We are all idiots. What are you talking about? Taeyang asked, frowning, though a flare of anxiety shot through him at the mention of the hospital. Jungkook let it all out. He repeated every single word Ryan had confessed to her father. He described her tears, her sacrifice, and the heavy burden she had carried for 8 long years just so Taeyang could become the star he is today. By the end of it, the room was dead silent. Taeyang sat frozen, his breath trembling. The walls of anger and betrayal he had built around his heart crumbled into dust, leaving behind a raw, bleeding ache of profound realization. She had not been selfish. She had loved him more than her own happiness. The stage for the BTS 13th anniversary festa was spectacular, but the private after party held in grand, beautiful decorated hall inside High was intimate. Only the members, their families, and crew staffs were invited. Vian stood near the catering table, dressed in a modest but elegant pastel dress. She felt out of place, but her manager had insisted she attend since she edited the main anniversary film. Suddenly, the lights in the hall dimmed. A soft spotlight illuminated the small stage at the front. Thang stepped up to the microphone. He was not wearing his stage outfit. He was in classic tailored back suit. He looked incredibly handsome, but his hands were trembling as he gripped the mic stand, his eyes scanning the room until they locked directly onto Ryan. Thank you all for being here for our 13th anniversary. Taeyang began, his deep voice echoed through the speakers, holding a strange emotional weight. But tonight, there is something else I need to do, someone I need to talk to. He stepped off the stage, walking down the steps. The crowd parted naturally, forming a path. Ryan's heart raced as he realized he was walking straight toward her. The other BTS members stood in the background, all wearing soft, knowing smiles. In the corner of the room, Ryan noticed her own parents standing alongside Taeyang's parents. Taeyang stopped right in front of her. The entire room went dead silent. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate shimmering diamond ring. He looked up at her, his eyes swimming with tears, completely stripped of the global idol persona. He was just the boy from Daegu again. Vayan, Taeyang said, his voice cracking slightly. I know I am not a person who loved you like a fictional man, but I try to love you from my whole heart. I know I made some mistakes in the past. I was angry and I did not try to find your reasons. I did not see the pain you were hiding. I am so sorry for hating you when you were only want me to get success. Tears fell freely from Vayan's eyes, blurring his beautiful face. She covered her mouth with both hands, her chest heavy. Taeyang took a deep breath, dropping down onto one knee. He looked up at her with devotion that could move mountains. So please, can you give me a chance to be your husband? For a second, the world stood still. 8 years of separation, misunderstandings, and silent longing dissolved into the air. Yes, Vayan cried out, her voice filled with the lifetime of pent up love. Yes, Taeyang. Taeyang slipped the ring onto her finger, stood up, and pulled her fiercely into his arms. He buried his face into her shoulder, sobbing softly as he held her as close as humanly possible, never wanting to let go again. The entire hall erupted into deafening cheers and applause. Jungkook cheered the loudest, throwing his arm around Jimin. Through her tears, Vayan saw their parents walking off. Her father and Taeyang's father smiled warmly, pulling the newly engaged couple into a massive warm family hug, pouring their love and blessings over the two souls who had finally beautifully found their way back home.